Hey there, welcome back to my channel where it's all about helping you design a life you love, one powerful decision at a time. So today we are talking about 3 reasons why you should stop using a pros and cons list to make decisions. And first of all, let me just say that I feel like the pros and cons list is really one of the only tools that we're given that doesn't leave it completely up to chance, right? So like, when you think about how you make decisions, people are like, oh, toss a coin or rock, paper, scissors, or things like that. So I feel like it is one of the only tools that that we use or that is talked about in a way to actually kind of think through how to make a decision, but it definitely has its limitations and there are much better ways to make decisions. So let's talk about the 3 reasons why you should stop using a pros and cons list. Number 1, a pros and cons list can actually cause you to be more confused because for every pro, there is a con. If you are trying to make a decision between something that has a ton of pros and something that has like no cons, that decision is pretty easy, right? It's usually a decision if we're busting out the pros and cons list. It's usually something that we, really are having a hard time weighing. Like there's a lot of pros or a lot of cons, or maybe not a lot of each. But regardless, it's something that isn't very clear cut. So as you're filling out a pros and cons list, you can actually get more confused, especially if you say ask people in Facebook groups. There was this woman in my neighborhood that was asking for advice on whether she should continue to work from home or take a promotion where she actually had to go into the office. And of course, people suggested making a pros and cons list, and then they started putting in their own opinions about the pros and the cons of each. And it was just like this back and forth where it was like, well, if you do this, then this will happen. If you do this, this will happen. If you do this, you won't have this. And if you do this, you won't have this. And you kind of just go down this rabbit hole of being of thinking of every and all possibilities, which actually isn't really that helpful. And like I said, it can make you more confused. It can make you, now you're starting to think about things that maybe you weren't even concerned about before. And if you're prone to overthinking like I am, it can actually cause you to spin out and feel even more overwhelmed. The second reason to stop using a pros and cons list is that it does not ask the right questions. It doesn't take into consideration your values, or what I call your trump cards. So probably one of the most classic examples of somebody using a pros and cons list is whenever Ross on Friends was trying to decide between Rachel and Julie. And Julie had all of these positive qualities, and Rachel had some pretty negative qualities. And really, Ross showed the limitations of the pros and cons list whenever one of the main cons of Julie was that she wasn't Rachel. So there are some things in our lives that are just more important than other things. And so just writing down the pros and writing down the cons, it doesn't take into consideration the importance of each item, of each thing. It doesn't take into consideration what your goals are, what kind of person you want to be, really what you're trying to achieve, what drives you, what motivates you. It doesn't ask the right questions to help you get the best answer for you. So the third reason to stop using your pros and cons list is that it doesn't help you understand your motivation behind your thoughts. So we think that pros and cons lists are objective, right? We think that we're just writing down facts, that these are the pros and these are the cons. But much of what we think are facts are actually just our thoughts. But when we present them as facts, we can really get into trouble. We don't realize that our emotions and a lot of the stories that we have in our head are really influencing the things that we're writing down on that pros and cons list. So we're not really evaluating any of those thoughts that we're writing down. So when you recognize them as thoughts instead of facts, you can start to look at the motivation behind it, which is a really important part of making a decision, right? How am I making this decision? Is it coming from a place of fear? Is it coming from doubt? Or is it coming from love? Or is it coming from faith? Where those thoughts are coming from are very important to consider whenever you are making a decision. And so a pros and cons list doesn't go that far, right? You're just writing down, some things that you think. You're not really evaluating why you think those things. So while a pros and cons list does help you get some of your thoughts down onto paper, it still has a lot of limitations, and there are just better ways to make decisions. One of the best ways you can make decisions is to make decisions ahead of time. Now, you may be like, well, I don't know what's going to happen in my life. I don't know how to make a decision for a situation that hasn't come up yet. What I mean by making decisions ahead of time is what do you want to base your decision making on? So going back to what we just talked about, we talked about understanding the motivation for your thoughts. So whenever I'm thinking about something, is this coming from fear? Or is this coming from love? Is this coming from faith? Is this coming from self-doubt? Or is this coming from self-confidence? So whenever you can decide ahead of time that, you know what, I'm not going to make my decisions based in fear. I'm not going to make my decisions based on self-doubt. I'm going to make my decisions based on love and personal integrity. And this is what I call your decision-making code. And it's something that I help my clients develop for themselves. I share mine, which I think is pretty great, but it's really important for you to develop this for yourself. This will ensure that you fully consider your values, your goals, your trump cards, your beliefs, everything, what's really important to you, because they are built in to your decision-making code. And when you base your decisions on your decision-making code, you won't have the problem of second guessing yourself, because sure, your brain is going to try to get you to second guess yourself. That's what brains do. They're always like, hey, like, what if we did this instead? Or what if you made the wrong decision? But whenever you have based a decision on your specific decision-making code, you know exactly why you made the decision that you made. And then almost like a little toddler, you just direct it right back to, no, this is exactly why I made this decision. When your brain tries to get you to waver and it tries to get you to do the ping pong back and forth in your head thing again, you will have concrete reasons for your decisions that you like, and then you will just redirect your brain back to those. So while I don't suggest that you use a pros and cons list, I do think there's a lot of value in getting your thoughts about things onto paper. And instead of thinking about them in the terms of pros and cons, think about them in terms of what is your motivation behind this thought? And is that really what you want to base your decision on? Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. If you like this video and would like to see more videos like this one that help you design a life you love, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button for this video. But if you would like to get started designing a life you love right now, you can start by grabbing the Super Simple Life Checkup. It is free and it is linked below. All right, I'll see y'all next time. Bye.